The crystal towers of Zephyria caught the dying light of three suns. Queen Vexara stood at the edge of the great arena, her body glowing with soft blue energy. She was beautiful in the way only the Luminari could be. Tall, graceful, with skin that seemed to be made of starlight itself. But today that light was growing dim. Around the arena, thousands of her people watched in silence. Their faces showed fear, sadness, and something worse. The look of a species that knew it was about to die. The Luminari had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. They could bend light itself to their will, create matter from pure energy, and heal wounds that would kill other beings. But none of that mattered now. The Devourers had come. These creatures were nothing like the Luminari. Where the Queen's people were beings of light and beauty, the Devourers were darkness made real. They ate entire worlds, consuming not just the plants and animals, but the very life force of every living thing. They had already destroyed 47 star systems. Zephyria was their next meal. In the center of the arena, the Devourer Prime waited. It was massive, easily 3 times the height of the Queen. Its body looked like a nightmare made of black metal and rotting flesh. Dozens of thick tentacles writhed around its central mass, each one tipped with razor-sharp claws. Its eyes burned with a hungry red light that seemed to pull the warmth from the air. The rules were simple and ancient. When 2 species could not share the same space, their leaders would fight. Winner takes all. Loser dies along with their entire race. It was supposed to be fair, but the Devourers had grown strong by eating so many worlds. This prime had the stolen power of billions of dead beings flowing through its veins. Queen Vexara stepped into the arena. Her people's ancient songs began to play, soft, beautiful music that had been sung for thousands of years. She raised her hands and brilliant beams of white light shot toward the monster. The light hit its armor and scattered like water on stone. The creature didn't even seem to notice. It moved faster than something so large should be able to move. A tentacle whipped through the air toward the Queen. She jumped back, creating a shield of pure energy just in time. The tentacle smashed into her shield with terrible force. Cracks appeared in the light barrier and she staggered backward. The Queen tried again, this time focusing all her power into a single, burning spear of energy. It struck the Devourer Prime in the chest and actually made it step back. For a moment, hope flickered in the watching crowd. But then they saw the truth. The attack had barely scratched the creature's armor. A thin line of dark blood oozed from the wound, but it was already healing. The Prime laughed. The sound was like metal scraping against stone. It spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Your light grows weak, little Queen. Soon we will feast on your pretty world. Your people will taste sweet as they die. Among the crowd, one figure watched with growing anger. Marcus Chen was not supposed to be here. He was human, and humans were not welcome in most parts of the galaxy. They were seen as a young, primitive race, barely more than clever animals. Marcus had crashed on Zephyria 6 months ago while running from a war on his home colony. The Luminari had allowed him to stay, but only because Queen Vexara was curious about his species. Marcus had spent those months learning about the Luminary culture. He studied their history, their art, their way of thinking. Most aliens saw humans as violent and crude, but the Queen had been different. She asked him questions about Earth, about human wars, about why his people fought so much. Marcus tried to explain that humans didn't fight because they wanted to. They fought because they had to survive. Now, watching the Queen struggle against the monster, Marcus felt sick. She was going to die. All of these beautiful, peaceful people were going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. The battle continued. The Queen was faster than the Prime, but she was getting tired. Each time she created a shield or fired an energy blast, her light grew a little dimmer. The Devourer, meanwhile, seemed to be getting stronger. Every time its tentacles struck the arena floor, cracks spread through the crystal. When it roared, windows shattered in the towers around them. Marcus had seen battles before. Real battles where people died in ugly, brutal ways. He had fought in the war against the machines on Kepler 442, where an AI plague had turned entire cities into death traps. He knew what desperation looked like. He knew what it meant when someone was about to lose everything. The Queen was losing. Not because she wasn't strong enough, but because she was fighting the wrong kind of fight. The Luminari were honorable. They fought with dignity, following ancient rules. But the Devourer Prime didn't care about honor. It just wanted to win. A massive tentacle wrapped around the Queen's leg. She cried out in pain as the creature lifted her into the air. More tentacles reached for her, ready to tear her apart. The crowd gasped and many began to weep. Their queen, their last hope, was about to die. Marcus looked around at the alien faces surrounding him. These beings had shown him kindness when they didn't have to. The queen herself had spent hours talking with him, trying to understand his strange human ways. She had even smiled when he told her jokes, terrible human jokes that probably didn't translate well. The Devourer Prime opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth like broken glass. Dark energy began to flow from the queen's body toward the creature. It was feeding on her, draining away her life force just like it had done to billions of others. That was when Marcus Chen stood up. He didn't think about it. He didn't plan it. He just moved. His hands found the metal rod he had been using as a walking stick, a piece of salvage from his crashed ship. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was all he had. The human vaulted over the barrier that separated the crowd from the arena. His boots hit the crystal floor with a sharp crack. Everyone turned to stare at him, the aliens in the crowd, the dying queen, even the Devourer Prime. For a moment, the entire arena was silent except for the sound of Marcus's breathing. Then the queen spoke, her voice weak but filled with horror. "No, human, get back! This is not your fight!" But Marcus was already running toward the monster. He had no energy powers, no special abilities, no ancient magic. He was just a human with a piece of metal, and a stubborn refusal to watch good people die. The Devourer Prime turned its burning red eyes toward this new arrival. For the first time in the battle, the creature looked confused. What was this tiny being doing? Didn't it know it was about to die? Marcus raised his makeshift weapon and let out a very human war cry. Raw, savage, and completely without honor. The real fight was about to begin. The Devourer Prime stared down at the small human charging toward it. Marcus Chen looked like an ant attacking a mountain. The creature was so surprised that it actually loosened its grip on Queen Vexara. She dropped to the crystal floor, gasping and clutching her injured leg. "Stop," she called out to Marcus. "You don't understand. The sacred laws forbid anyone else from entering the arena. You'll make this worse." But Marcus wasn't listening to sacred laws. He had spent too many years watching good people die because of rules and honor and ancient traditions. On Kepler 442, his unit had lost half their soldiers because their commanding officer refused to break military protocol. Sometimes the only way to win was to throw the rule book out the window. The Devourer Prime let out another grinding laugh. It swung one of its massive tentacles down toward Marcus like a club. The human saw it coming and threw himself to the side. The tentacle smashed into the arena floor where he had been standing, sending chunks of crystal flying in all directions. Marcus rolled to his feet and kept running. He wasn't trying to fight the creature head-on. That would be suicide. Instead, he was studying it, the way he had been trained to study enemy positions during the war. Every creature had weak points. Even something as powerful as the Prime had to have vulnerabilities. The tentacles were fast, but they were also heavy. Each time the creature swung one, it took a moment to pull it back. That gave Marcus small windows of opportunity. He darted between the writhing limbs, looking for patterns, looking for chances. Another tentacle whipped toward him. This time, instead of diving away, Marcus slid under it like a baseball player stealing second base. The rough crystal floor tore at his clothes and scraped his skin, but he made it through. Now he was closer to the creature's main body. The luminari in the crowd were making sounds Marcus had never heard before. Some seemed angry, others frightened. A few were chanting what sounded like prayers. None of them understood what they were seeing. In their culture, battles were formal affairs between equals. This wasn't a battle, it was chaos. Queen Vexara struggled to stand. Her leg was badly hurt, and her light was flickering like a dying candle. But she was still alive, and that meant she could still fight. She raised her hands and sent another energy blast toward the Prime. This one hit it in the back while it was focused on Marcus. The creature roared and spun around, confused about which enemy to attack. That was exactly what Marcus had been hoping for. While the Prime was distracted, he got his first good look at its body. Up close, it was even more horrible than it had seemed from the crowd. Its skin looked like burned leather and it smelled like rotting meat. But Marcus forced himself to focus on what mattered, finding its weak spots. The armor wasn't uniform. Where the tentacles attached to the main body, there were gaps, joints, Marcus realized. Just like the machines back home, this thing needed flexible connections between its parts. And flexible meant vulnerable. Marcus hefted his metal rod. It wasn't much, just a piece of titanium from his ship's hull. But it was sharp on one end and he had good aim. During the war, he had learned to throw knives with deadly accuracy. This wouldn't be much different. He waited for his moment. The Prime swung 2 tentacles at once, one at him, one at the Queen. Marcus dropped flat on the ground, letting the tentacle pass over his head. Then he sprang up and threw his weapon with all his strength. The rod flew straight and true. It punched through the thin membrane where one of the tentacles connected to the main body. Dark blood sprayed out and the creature let out a shriek of real pain. For the first time since the battle began, the Devourer Prime had been seriously hurt. The tentacle went limp, hanging uselessly from the creature's side. The Prime looked down at the small human who had just wounded it. Its red eyes blazed with fury. "Impossible," it hissed. "You are nothing, a worm. How dare you—" "Yeah, well," Marcus said, breathing hard. "Worms can be pretty annoying." He didn't wait for the creature to finish talking. He was already moving, looking for another weapon. The arena floor was covered with broken crystal from where the tentacles had smashed down. Marcus grabbed a sharp piece and kept circling the creature. Queen Vexara watched in amazement. She had never seen anyone fight like this. The human wasn't using honor or courage or noble purpose. He was using tricks. He was being sneaky. By all the laws of her people, it should have been shameful, but it was working. The Prime was getting frustrated. It was used to enemies who stood and fought, who met its power with their own power. This human was like trying to swat a fly, always moving, always dodging, always finding new ways to cause pain. Marcus ran toward the creature again, but this time he changed direction at the last second. Instead of attacking the Prime directly, he dove toward one of its feet. The creature was so massive that its clawed feet were as big as Marcus's whole body, but where the foot met the leg there was another joint, another weak spot. He drove his crystal shard deep into the gap. More dark blood flowed out and the creature stumbled. For a moment it couldn't support its own weight properly. It dropped to one knee, bringing its head down to Marcus's level. That was the opening Queen Vexara had been waiting for. She gathered the last of her strength and created a spear of pure white light. This one was different from her earlier attacks, more focused, more desperate. She wasn't trying to fight with honor anymore. She was trying to save her people. The light spear hit the Prime in the face. It screamed and reared back, clawing at its burning eyes. For the first time it looked afraid. Marcus grinned. He was covered in alien blood. His clothes were torn and he had cuts all over his body, but he felt alive in a way he hadn't since the war ended. This was what humans did best. They found ways to survive when everyone said it was impossible. "Hey, ugly," he called out to the Prime. "How about we try that again?" The creature turned its wounded gaze toward him. Now it understood. This wasn't a formal duel anymore. This was a real fight, the kind where anything goes and only the strongest survive. The Queen limped over to stand beside Marcus. She was still weak, but there was something new in her eyes, something that looked almost like respect. "I don't understand your methods," she said quietly, "but I begin to see their value." Marcus nodded. "Sometimes you have to fight dirty to fight fair." The Devourer Prime pulled itself back to its full height. It was hurt now, truly hurt, but it was also angry, and angry predators were the most dangerous kind. "You think you have won?" It snarled. "I have eaten entire star systems. I have consumed the life force of billions. 2 small beings cannot stop me." "Maybe not," Marcus said. He looked up at the massive creature towering over them. "But we're sure going to try." The real battle was just beginning. The Devourer Prime was no longer playing games. Its wounded eyes burned with rage and dark energy began to flow from its body like smoke. The air around it grew cold, and the crystal floor started to crack under its feet. "I will make you suffer for this," it promised. "I will eat your soul slowly, bit by bit, until you beg for death." Marcus wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. "You know," he said to Queen Vexara, "villains always talk too much. It's like they can't help themselves." The Queen looked at him with confusion. "Villains? Bad guys? Evil monsters. The things that need to be stopped." Marcus picked up another piece of broken crystal. "Where I come from, we have a saying. If the enemy is talking, they're not attacking. So let's keep it talking." But the Devourer Prime was done with words. It lunged forward with 3 tentacles at once, trying to crush both of them. Marcus grabbed the Queen's arm and pulled her to the side. They dove behind one of the large crystal formations that decorated the arena. "This is madness," Vexara said. She was breathing hard and her light was growing even dimmer. "We cannot win through trickery alone. It's too strong." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But strength isn't everything. Back home I once saw a pack of wolves take down a bear. The bear was stronger, tougher, had better claws and teeth. But the wolves were smarter. They worked together. The tentacles smashed through their hiding spot, sending crystal fragments flying everywhere. Marcus and the Queen rolled in opposite directions, forcing the Prime to split its attention. Marcus had been watching the creature carefully during the fight. It was powerful, yes, but it was also predictable. It relied on brute force because brute force had always worked before. It wasn't used to enemies who thought differently. "Your Majesty," Marcus called out as he dodged another attack. "Can you create light that doesn't hurt it? Just bright light like a flashlight?" "A flashlight?" She didn't understand the word, but she got the idea. "Yes, but why? Light attacks are not working, trust me. When I give the signal, shine the brightest light you can right in its eyes. Don't try to hurt it, just blind it." Vexara hesitated. Everything about this went against her training, her culture, her understanding of proper combat. But she had seen what human cunning could do. Against all logic, it was working. Marcus ran directly at the Prime again. This time he was making a lot of noise, yelling and waving his crystal shard in the air. The creature focused all its attention on him, bringing its massive head down to snap at him with its horrible teeth. "Now," Marcus shouted. Queen Vexara raised her hands and created the brightest light she could manage. It wasn't an attack, just pure blazing illumination that filled the entire arena. The Devourer Prime shrieked and jerked its head back, temporarily blinded. Marcus had been ready for this. He had closed his eyes just before the Queen created her light. While the creature was confused and in pain, he climbed onto its lowered head. The Prime's skin was rough and slippery, but Marcus had trained for worse conditions during the war. He worked his way toward the creature's neck, looking for what he hoped would be there. Every living thing he had ever studied had one vulnerability in common: a nerve cluster somewhere near the brain. A spot where the right kind of damage could shut down the entire system. The Prime realized what was happening and began thrashing wildly, trying to shake Marcus off. But the human held on, using his combat experience to ride out the creature's movements. He had done this before, jumping onto the backs of the war machines on Kepler 442. There, behind the creature's left ear, he found what he was looking for. A small spot where the armor was thinner, where he could see dark veins pulsing beneath the skin. The creature's neural center had to be somewhere around there. But his crystal shard wasn't long enough to reach through the armor. He needed something better, something stronger. "Queen," he called out while holding on for dear life. "I need you to hit this exact spot with everything you have. But you have to wait until I say when." "I don't understand," she replied. "If I miss, I might hit you instead." "Then don't miss." Marcus began working on the armor with his makeshift weapon, chipping away at it piece by piece. It was slow work, and the Prime was getting angrier every second. One of its tentacles whipped around, trying to grab him off its head. Marcus flattened himself against the creature's skull and kept working. Queen Vexara watched in fascination and horror. The human was completely exposed, one mistake away from death, but he kept working with steady, determined movements. There was something about his focus that reminded her of the ancient stories of her people's greatest heroes. Finally, Marcus managed to crack through the outer layer of armor. Underneath, he could see the soft tissue that protected the creature's brain. It wasn't much of an opening, but it might be enough. "Now," he yelled. "Hit it now!" But instead of jumping away to safety, Marcus did something that made the Queen's breath catch in her throat. He stayed where he was, using his own body to mark the exact spot she needed to hit. If her aim was off by even a little bit, she would kill the human instead of the monster. For a moment, Vexara hesitated. She couldn't risk it. She couldn't kill someone who was trying to save her people. "Do it," Marcus shouted. "Trust your aim." The Devourer Prime's tentacle wrapped around Marcus's leg and started to pull him away from the weak spot. In seconds, the opening would be gone. Queen Vexara made her choice. She poured every bit of remaining energy she had into a single focused beam of light. It was smaller than her previous attacks, but far more concentrated. She aimed for the tiny gap Marcus had created, trusting in skills she had practiced for centuries. The light beam shot across the arena like a laser. It missed Marcus by less than an inch and punched deep into the Devourer Prime's neural center. The creature let out a scream that shattered crystal formations throughout the arena. Its tentacles went rigid, then began to spasm uncontrollably. Marcus was thrown clear as the prime collapsed. He hit the arena floor hard and rolled several times before coming to a stop near one of the walls. For a moment, he didn't move. The Devourer Prime was dying. Dark blood poured from its wound, and its eyes were growing dim. But it wasn't dead yet. With its last strength, it raised one massive tentacle over the spot where Marcus lay motionless. Queen Vexara tried to create another energy blast, but she had nothing left. She had used up all her power in that final attack. She could only watch as the tentacle began to fall toward the human who had saved them all. At the last second, Marcus rolled aside. The tentacle crashed into the floor where his head had been, sending cracks through the crystal that reached all the way to the arena walls. Then the Devourer Prime let out one final breath and was still. Marcus lay on his back, staring up at the alien sky through the arena's open roof. Every part of his body hurt, but he was alive. More importantly, so was the queen. "Is it over?" Vexara asked weakly. Marcus managed a tired smile. "Yeah, it's over." But as he spoke, he could hear sounds from outside the arena. The rest of the Devourer fleet was still out there, and they would know their prime was dead. The real war was just beginning. Still, for now, they had won an impossible victory. A human and an alien queen, fighting together against the darkness. Not bad for a day's work. The silence in the arena was broken by the sound of Marcus coughing. He pushed himself up to a sitting position, wincing at the pain in his ribs. Around him, thousands of Luminari stared in complete shock. Their ancient laws had been broken. Their sacred ritual had been ruined, but somehow, impossibly, they were alive. Queen Vexara limped over to where Marcus sat. Her light was so dim now that she looked almost human in the fading daylight. "That was the most insane thing I've ever witnessed," she said. "Yeah, well, humans are good at insane," Marcus replied. He looked up at the dead Devourer Prime. Even in death, it was terrifying. The question is, what happens now? As if in answer to his words, a deep rumbling sound filled the air. Through the crystal walls of the arena, they could see dark shapes moving in the sky. The rest of the Devourer fleet was coming. "They know their prime is dead," the queen said quietly. "They will be angry. And hungry." Marcus stood up, testing his injured leg. "How many ships? Dozens? Maybe hundreds." Vexara's voice was filled with despair. "We barely managed to defeat one of them. We cannot fight an entire fleet." The rumbling grew louder. Through the arena's walls, they could see energy beams lancing down from orbit. The Devourers were already attacking the outer cities. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were turning into pillars of flame. "We need to get out of here," Marcus said. "Is there somewhere safe?" "Underground bunkers? Mountain caves?" "There is nowhere safe from them," the queen replied. "They will strip this world bare. They will consume every living thing." Marcus grabbed her by the shoulders. "Hey, look at me. Don't give up now. We just proved that these things can be killed. That prime seemed impossible to beat, but we found a way. One prime, yes, but not an entire fleet. We are doomed, human. I am sorry that your bravery will go to waste." But Marcus was already thinking, his mind racing through possibilities. During the war against the machines, he had learned that sometimes the craziest plans were the ones that actually worked. "Your Majesty, I need to ask you something important. When you hit the prime with that final energy blast, what exactly did you do?" "I channeled all my remaining life force into a concentrated beam. It should have killed me, but somehow..." She looked confused. "I am still alive. Weak, but alive. And when the energy went through me into the creature, did you feel anything strange?" Vexara paused, thinking back to that moment. "Yes, there was something different. Your body seemed to absorb some of the energy instead of just letting it pass through." "I have never seen anything like it," Marcus nodded slowly. An idea was forming in his mind. A terrible, dangerous, probably impossible idea. The Devourers feed on life energy, right? They consume it from other beings. Yes, that is how they grow so powerful. But they've never tried to feed on a human before. They've probably never even seen a human. Marcus looked up at the darkening sky, where Devourer ships were beginning to descend toward the city. What if human energy is different somehow? What if it's poisonous to them? The queen stared at him. That is a very large what if. And even if it were true, how would we use such knowledge? You are only one human. Maybe I'm only one human, Marcus said, but I might be enough. He began walking toward the arena exit. Queen Vexara hurried after him despite her injured leg. Where are you going? To do something really stupid. But first I need to get to my ship. Marcus's crashed vessel was on the outskirts of the city, in a field of crystal flowers that the luminary had been too polite to clear away. The ship was a wreck, its hull cracked, its engines dead, its life support systems barely functional. But some things still worked. "What are you looking for?" the Queen asked as Marcus rummaged through the debris. "This," he said, pulling out a small metal cylinder, emergency beacon. "It's designed to send out a distress signal that can be picked up from several light years away. But who would answer?" "We are alone out here." Marcus smiled grimly. "Not entirely alone. There's a human fleet about 3 days away. They're probably looking for me." He began adjusting the beacon's settings, modifying its signal frequency. "See, when I left Kepler 442, I wasn't exactly supposed to leave. I may have borrowed some military equipment without permission. You are a criminal? More like a deserter. The war was over, but the generals wanted to keep fighting anyway. I couldn't watch any more good people die for their pride." Marcus finished his adjustments and activated the beacon. "But right now those generals and their fleet might be exactly what we need." The beacon began transmitting. Its signal would reach human space in a matter of hours. Whether anyone would come to help was another question entirely. "Even if your people receive the signal, they cannot arrive in time," Vexara pointed out. "We have hours, not days. I know. That's where the really stupid part of my plan comes in." Marcus walked back toward the crashed ship's power core. It was a fusion reactor, designed to burn clean and safe for decades, but with the right modifications, it could be turned into something very different. "I'm going to overload the reactor," he explained as he worked. "Create a massive energy explosion, but not the normal kind of explosion, one that's specifically tuned to human bioenergy signatures. That would kill you instantly, maybe. Or maybe it would create a wave of human-type energy that spreads across the entire planet. If I'm right about human energy being poisonous to devourers," the Queen understood immediately. "It would poison them all. But you would certainly die in the process, probably, yeah. That is not acceptable. I will not allow you to sacrifice yourself for my people." Marcus looked at her seriously. "Your Majesty, with respect, this isn't your choice to make. Those things out there are going to kill everyone on this world if someone doesn't stop them. I've seen what devourers do to the places they attack. There won't be anything left but dead rock and empty space." Above them, the sky lit up with more energy blasts. The devourers were getting closer to the city center. They could hear the distant sound of buildings collapsing. "There has to be another way," Vexara insisted. "Maybe there is, but we don't have time to find it." Marcus continued working on the reactor. "Look, I've been running from fights my whole life. On Earth, on Kepler 442, and now here. I'm tired of running. But if you die, who will teach us these new ways of fighting? Who will show us how to survive against enemies like this?" Marcus paused in his work. That was actually a good point. If humanity was going to have a place in this galaxy, they would need allies. And the Luminari could be powerful allies if they learned to think differently about warfare. "You're right," he said finally, "but I still think this energy wave idea might work. What if," he thought for a moment, "what if we don't have to kill me to do it?" "What do you mean?" "When you channeled energy through me before, I didn't die. My body seemed to handle it somehow. What if you could channel energy into me? Then I could redirect it outward as a human energy wave. The amount of power needed would be enormous. It would require every luminary on the planet working together." Marcus grinned. "Then we better get started. How do we get the word out to your people?" Queen Vexara looked at the human, this strange, brave, impossible creature who had already saved her life once. "You realize this plan is just as likely to kill you as the first one?" "Yeah, but this way, if it doesn't work, I'll still be alive to try something else." The Queen made her decision. She raised her hands and sent a brilliant flare of light into the sky, a signal that every luminary would recognize. The call to unite for one final stand. "Very well, Marcus Chen of Earth. Let us attempt your insane plan." In the distance, devourer ships continued to rain destruction on the crystal cities. But for the first time since the attack began, there was hope. Queen Vexara's signal lit up the sky like a star being born. All across Zephyria, the surviving luminary saw it and understood. Their queen was calling for the Great Joining, a ritual that had not been performed in over 1,000 years. Every member of their species would link their life energy together for one desperate attempt at survival. Marcus watched in amazement as points of light began appearing across the planet. From the crystal cities, from hidden shelters, from the deepest caves, anywhere that Luminari had taken refuge from the Devourer attack. They were answering their queen's call. "How many of your people are left?" Marcus asked. "Perhaps 10,000, maybe fewer." The queen's voice was sad but determined. "Not so long ago we numbered in the millions." 10,000 is enough, Marcus said firmly. "On Earth we have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Vexara looked confused. "Dogs? I'll explain later. Right now we need to focus on not dying." The Devourer ships were almost overhead now. Marcus could see them clearly. Massive black vessels that looked like flying tumors. Energy weapons charged with hungry red light. Landing pods were already dropping toward the city, carrying more monsters like the Prime they had just killed. "They're coming fast," Marcus observed. "How long do you need for this great joining thing?" "Several minutes at least. My people need time to find safe positions and link their energy together." The Queen looked worried. "We may not have that long." Marcus checked the weapons he had salvaged from his ship. A plasma pistol with half a charge, a combat knife, a handful of explosive charges meant for mining operations. Not much against an entire fleet. "Then we make time," he said. The first Devourer landing pod smashed into the arena just 100 feet away. The pod split open like a diseased flower and creatures poured out. They were smaller than the Prime but just as horrifying. Things with too many teeth and claws that dripped with dark energy. Marcus opened fire with his plasma pistol. The first shot took down one of the creatures, burning a hole through its chest. But there were dozens more behind it and his weapon only had a few shots left. "Your Majesty," he said calmly, "you might want to start that energy linking thing now." Queen Vexara closed her eyes and began to glow with soft blue light. Around the planet 10,000 Luminari did the same. Their individual lights began to pulse in rhythm, like a cosmic heartbeat. More landing pods crashed down around the city. The Devourers were spreading out, searching for survivors. Marcus could hear the sounds of battle from other parts of the city. Energy weapons firing, buildings collapsing. The screams of both hunters and hunted. A group of 5 Devourers spotted them and came charging across the arena floor. Marcus emptied his plasma pistol into them, dropping 2. The remaining 3 kept coming. He drew his knife and prepared to make his last stand. But then something unexpected happened. Beams of light began raining down from the sky. Not Devourer weapons, but clean human plasma fire. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace above the planet. "What?" Marcus began, then grinned. "The cavalry's here." His emergency beacon had worked. The human fleet had received his signal and made the jump to Zephyria. Marcus could see them now, sleek human warships, their hulls scarred from the war against the machines. They were outnumbered by the Devourer fleet, but they were fighting with the desperate fury of humans protecting their own. "Marcus Chen," a voice boomed from overhead as a human dropship swooped down into the arena. "You're under arrest for desertion, theft of military property, and unauthorized use of a spacecraft." Marcus laughed out loud. "Admiral Torres? Is that you?" "Damn right it's me. And when this is over, I'm going to throw you in the brig for the next 10 years. The dropship landed and human marines poured out. They immediately opened fire on the approaching Devourers, their advanced weapons cutting through the creatures like paper. Admiral Torres herself stepped out of the ship, a tough, weathered woman who had been fighting wars since before Marcus was born. "So," she said, looking around at the crystal arena and the massive dead Devourer Prime, "this is where you've been hiding." "It's a long story," Marcus replied. "But right now we need to buy time for the Luminari to finish their energy ritual. And Admiral, when they do finish it, you're going to see something incredible." Torres nodded. She had learned to trust Marcus's judgment during the war, even when his methods were unorthodox. "Marines, defensive perimeter!" Nothing gets through to those glowing aliens. The battle raged across Zephyria. In space, human ships traded fire with Devourer vessels. On the ground, human marines fought alongside what Luminari could still bear arms. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos, the kind that humans excelled at. Queen Vexara's light was growing brighter now. All across the planet, the energy of her people was flowing toward her. Marcus could feel it in the air, a tingling sensation that made his skin buzz with electricity. "It's almost ready," the Queen said without opening her eyes. "Are you prepared, Marcus Chen?" "As ready as I'll ever be." The Queen's light suddenly blazed like a small sun. Energy from 10,000 Luminari flowed into her, then into Marcus. For a moment he thought it would burn him alive. Pain shot through every nerve in his body as alien power coursed through his human cells. But then something amazing happened. Instead of destroying him, the energy began to change. His human biology was transforming it, modifying it into something new, something that felt wrong to the devourers. Marcus became the center of a growing sphere of human-flavored energy. It spread outward from him like ripples on a pond, passing harmlessly through humans and Luminari but striking the devourers like poison. The creatures closest to Marcus fell first. They simply collapsed, their bodies unable to process the alien energy. The wave continued to spread, reaching the devourers throughout the city, then across the planet. In space, the effect was even more dramatic. Devourer ships that had been winning the battle suddenly went dark as the wave reached them. Their crews were dying, poisoned by energy they couldn't digest. Within minutes, every devourer on or around Zephyria was dead. Marcus collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by what he had just experienced. But he was alive. More than alive. He could feel the energy still flowing through him, changing him in ways he didn't understand yet. Incredible, Queen Vexara whispered. You have bonded with our energy permanently. You are no longer entirely human. Admiral Torres walked over to them, her expression a mixture of amazement and suspicion. All right, Chen. I think you better explain what just happened, and what this means for humanity. Marcus looked up at her, then at the Queen, then at the human Marines standing guard around them. An idea was forming in his mind. A bigger idea than just surviving one battle. Admiral, what if I told you that we just discovered humanity has a special talent, something that makes us valuable to other species in the galaxy? I'd say you better start talking fast. Marcus stood up, feeling stronger than he ever had before. The galaxy is full of predator species like the Devourers, races that consume other races for power. Most civilizations fight them with honor and tradition and formal rules. But humans, we fight dirty. We break rules. We think outside the box. He gestured to the dead Prime. The Luminari are incredibly advanced, but they couldn't beat that thing using their traditional methods. It took human tactics. Guerrilla warfare, deception, targeting weak points instead of meeting strength with strength. Admiral Torres was listening intently now. You're talking about an alliance. I'm talking about a partnership. The Luminari have technology and energy powers that we can barely imagine. We have tactical flexibility and the ability to think like predators when we need to. Together we could deal with threats that neither species could handle alone. Queen Vexara finished. Her voice was thoughtful. This goes against thousands of years of our laws and traditions. But then, so did what happened in the arena today. Marcus looked up at the alien sky, where human and Luminari ships were beginning to work together to clean up the remaining Devourer debris. The universe is a dangerous place. Maybe it's time for a new kind of alliance, one based on mutual respect instead of one species helping another. Admiral Torres was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. A predator smile that Marcus recognized from their war days. Chen, you might just have started something bigger than you realize. When Earth finds out that humans have a unique military value in galactic conflicts, we won't be the junior partners anymore, Marcus agreed. We'll be equals. Queen Vexara raised her hand and soft light began to flow between her fingers. But now Marcus could see that light differently, could almost feel how to manipulate it himself. The synthesis protocol, she said quietly, a joining of Luminari energy mastery and human tactical innovation. Yes, I believe this could work. As the three of them stood in the ruined arena,